I'm sure you've played a game and wondered to yourself if there are hidden reasons for what just happened. But what about when the game is actively trying to make you wonder that? Mystery as an event is something that can be easily pieced together by what happened before and after, but a mysterious character is a trickier task than that. For the purposes of this video, mystery characters aren't just characters you don't know much about, but a character who you're actively supposed to speculate on. These are usually portrayed as cool and mysterious to try to highlight their most stylish or awe-inspiring aspects, while leaving the audience to fill in the gaps with whatever is in line with how they view the character. Metal Gear Solid has a lot of characters like this, but some show how leaving so much vague can be frustrating with a series as information dense as this one. Most characters are done well, but a few troublesome characters aren't helped by their mystery, and in one case, the character suffers greatly for it. So let's analyze some characters intended to be intriguing with mystery, and how well it works, and it may not work. Ocelot is probably the best example of a character's mystery being used to engage the audience in their actions. Starting in Metal Gear Solid 2, Ocelot immediately begins by turning against the established bad guys. Seeing him later on face to face with people he's clearly lying to draws you in to speculate on his real objectives. The reveal that he's been working for the Patriots brings clarity to some of his actions, but shortly turning to Liquid turns him into an all-powerful rogue figure, which makes you wonder what his new plan is and what he wants. What you don't know helps draw you to what you do know. That Ocelot is a controlling, backstabbing schemer who is one step ahead of everyone, ruthless enough to hurt anyone in his way, and theatrical enough to be so much fun to watch. Ocelot's mystery in MGS2 draws you deeper into Ocelot's actions and plans, with more details becoming noticeable over time. MGS3 Ocelot also has great moments of mystery, but they build up slower. He starts off as a weird guy who still fits in line with the character, but isn't as commanding as he was previously. He starts to do more and more that makes you wonder what the hell is going through his mind, with some reckless attempts at intimidation and self-absorbed fantasy indulgence. His building rebelliousness helps both his character arc of not liking Volgan's actions, and helps aid in the idea that he has more going on than he lets on. Although there's not much of a payoff to reanalyzing his words or actions. His relationships to other characters are where the mystery is most well used in this game, as speculating on how he sees others is the most interesting part of his character, especially given the wrinkle of who his parents are. Ocelot isn't someone whose central character is defined by mystery. The mystery just enhances the personality and theatricality to make him probably the most absorbing and fun character in the series.
Goodbye, Mr. President.
Ocelot was not the first mystery character in the series, however. So let's see who was. Liquid's setup as the leader of the bad guys makes him immediately important, but what ultimately draws the viewer to Liquid is the speculation of who he is and how he's related to you. The weird name connection and physical similarity to the player character already makes us want to learn more, and they do a good job of throwing interesting and relevant details. The mystery, as well as the excellent voice actor, does well to draw the interest from the player and make every new detail important, so learning about the character feels natural for most of the cutscenes. He is a proud soldier with no reservations who wants everyone to know that he's the best, despite his own insecurities. The way the mystery is handled here is more impressive to me than with Ocelot, because Ocelot already had a lot going for him as a character, whereas Liquid is both a cliché and also very simple as a character. A long-lost brother who you are destined to fight could have been the most boring encounter in the world, but the mystery, build-up, and presentation make him work. Liquid could have been so forgettable if not for the excellent mystery and memorable voice.
Now I'll finish the work that Father began. I will surpass him. I will destroy him.
Liquid and Solid were both built from the ground up for those new to the series in the original Metal Gear Solid. But what about the other brother? Solidus has a strange setup that initially doesn't have much mystery. This guy says he's Solid Snake, but he isn't. The mystery kind of hits you in the face all at once in a pretty crazy cutscene, followed by a crazy boss battle. Solidus' character is built up from his own words and the words of the President and Vamp. He's someone who despises the Patriots, what they're building, and wants to destroy both to ensure the freedom of others. Throughout Raiden's portions, you're constantly told not to trust Solid Snake as he's basically a terrorist, and Solidus is presented in almost the same light. It makes it easier to focus on the reasonable bits of Solidus' motivation. Slowly, Solidus stops feeling like a bad guy and more like someone you just have to beat, especially once your own commanders go haywire. This storytelling works because of Solidus' mystery, how you know so little about who this is, but they give you enough to see how motivated he is and make it easy to sympathize with him.
What I wanted to take back from the Patriots are things like freedom, civil rights, opportunities.
Solidus was built to be the bad guy who could be a good guy. But how about a babyface whose loyalty turned them heel? The boss's mystery is built up from Snake's emotion that he couldn't believe his mentor would defect, and that he wants to understand why she did it. The question is never properly answered until the end, but along the way we get insight into how she sees her old student, her old comrades, and her new comrades. The mystery never really builds, but her character does, as more of her relationships are detailed in interesting ways. The scenes with her and Snake feel intense, but don't feel angry. Her scenes with Volgin make her feel respected, but she seems so distant from him. Her scenes with Ocelot and Eva I think are the most interesting because of how much both are hiding, and how much Boss might know about both of these. This is the one character whose words have more meaning because of the mystery surrounding them. Who she is at heart, where her loyalty lies, and what she wants to impart to others are all things that can be interpreted from what she says. The strength of the story, of her ultimately unrecognized sacrifice and dedication, is so easy to get wrapped up in that the mystery feels more worth exploring. Boss's mystery isn't as interesting as the relationships to other characters, but that mystery allows her to not fit in with the others and still make cohesive sense. The boss has a presence that gives her scenes more weight, and the mystery helps that presence become well realized.
The only thing we can believe in with absolute certainty is the mission, Jack.
Of the two villains I discussed, they weren't really trying to make them evil, just interesting. So can you use mystery to build up hatred for a character? Yes. You start from a position of someone who previously worked with Huey and who has an idea of who he was, despite not much of that being shown. It's really easy to feel sorry for Huey that he doesn't deserve the treatment he initially gets. However, over time, a sense of mystery does build over what Huey actually wants, if he has a hidden objective, or even what he was doing during those 9 years. The emphasis on how his story doesn't make cohesive sense explicitly brings attention to how he is constantly lying and constantly changing his story to suit his need of the moment. It lessens the weight of his regular mannerisms and puts emphasis on what he's hiding. Ironically, in a list that contains 3 villains, this is the most effective use of mystery as a method of turning the audience against a character. Huey's unseen characteristics lean so heavily in a negative direction that the mystery seems to encourage the audience to think the absolute worst of Huey. This use of mystery is really effective and surprisingly elegant. There's no real big turning point, just a lot of things that build until you eventually hate the character. Huey's mystery accentuates his most villainous qualities, and it got more out of the character than if it was made obvious from the start. Now, all of these characters were set up as some sort of obstacle against the player, but what about your support? Eva is a spy from another country, so mystery is part of her character. She's set up as someone who should always be watched out for and never trusted, even if her information about the mission is still good. Eva goes out of her way to keep information from Snake, but also draws attention to that, while keeping innocent mannerisms, as if it ultimately doesn't matter. This presents her as playful, but also dangerous, with the mystery being how she might be using you and may ultimately hurt you, much like how the boss hurt you. The mystery helps her character feel risky enough to always watch out for. But she's so entertaining and so enticing that watching her isn't tense or scary, it's fun. The mystery with Eva is used to initially set her up as someone with their own objective that should be figured out and someone who should be distrusted. Once that objective is seemingly known and a genuine sense of trust is made, that mystery is not as frequently displayed until it suddenly becomes the most important thing in the world. This is not the most dramatic use of mystery, but it's probably the most elegant. Eva gets to be interesting, entertaining, important, dramatic, and human, despite us never really knowing that much about her. Even after the surprise at the end, you can still imagine Eva as a confident, affectionate, fun, charming woman who wants a stimulating lifestyle. Eva's mystery highlights everything that makes Eva a great character to begin with, and makes her an even more fun character.
I'll bet if I kissed you, you'd taste like a wild beast.
Now that we've seen how mystery can be done to improve a character, let's see what happens when that fails, but the character still works. First is Drebin. Drebin is basically a living symptom of the world of Guns of the Patriots being built. You meet him around a third of the way through Act 1, and he talks at length about how the new gun system works. Most of what he tells Snake and the audience is essentially exposition that is easy to believe, but not motivated enough to reflect the player. His first speech is just explaining why Snake needs Drebin to use any guns he finds, explain the pieces that ultimately created this system, and plant a story device for later. After this, Drebin settles into the role of a background storyteller and gameplay justifier. For all the B&B Corps' backstories, and the logistics of how Snake gains any new tools, Drebin is there with a lengthy explanation. This is storytelling designed to give an immediate answer to any gaps in the storytelling. But Drebin doesn't feel that much like a character in the story. Any personal actions he takes are essentially to push the story forward in a quick manner, and everything else is a job, like giving the merchant from Resident Evil 4 a backstory. His scenes are extremely long and dry, and rarely have the emotion or importance of the other scenes in the game. Drebin's mystery as a character doesn't help him as part of the story, and makes a lot of his scenes basically have no payoff. He's set up as someone you should be cautious about, but there's only one plot thread that remotely relates to this, and it's only ever brought up twice. Shortly after you first meet him, and then way at the end. The cast is also enormous, so keeping track of his goals seems fruitless since he's relatively unimportant. The amount of cutscenes is also enormous, so trying to linger on any of his words seems fruitless as well. Since the only thing being built in his mystery fades into the background almost immediately, Drebin's mystery can't really build. He just kind of shows up eventually as an explanation for how Snake can do something he wouldn't otherwise do. It's extremely easy to write Drebin off as a character who just exists to justify gameplay mechanics and bridge gaps in the story. Instead of making you think, what's Drebin really up to? It's more like, who cares what Drebin's up to? It's hard to invest in the mystery of who a character might be when the answer is whatever the story and gameplay needs him to be. Drebin's mystery fails, but I don't consider him valueless because his character is still interesting. Where Drebin works as a character is when he's given the opportunity to show off his personality. They aren't given much weight since his magic tricks and little quirks never get a proper chance to influence the story, but it does give his scenes some much needed energy and levity. He may do this too often, but a lot of his scenes where he's commenting on the state of the world do bring some good emotion to the scenes he's in, and it fits with the revelation they bring later.
But deep within that shell, something human survives. A fragile, scarred heart.
Drebin also has a big presence in gameplay because of his store. Weapons dropped by the enemies actually have value now, and Drebin becomes the enabler of Snake to participate in the war economy. As weird as it is to give the merchant a backstory, it does fit, and it makes his character feel omnipresent, which also fits as he's permanently watching Snake. Drebin in some way becomes sort of a liberating force in this game, because if you so desire, you can buy whatever you need to make the game into a reactive sandbox with weird weapons and tools. So while Drebin isn't particularly aided or helped as a character because of his mystery, there's enough going on that he isn't completely useless. Drebin is the human manifestation of the war economy that gets its time to be flashy and fun, but unfortunately gets loaded down with too much exposition and forced mystery.
Crush. Mix. Burn. Repeat.
The second character I will argue is hurt by mystery may surprise you given how much I've praised them in the recent past. Quiet. Quiet is a character who's missing an arc and a direct connection to others in the story. She's built up in passing conversations initially, using the best method of enticing an audience, promised nudity. Her initial encounter is probably a surprise to most and does a good job of presenting her as mysterious, as you never get a clear view of her until the end of the boss fight. The mystery actually continues to be done well after she saves you and then allows herself to be captured, and then they didn't know what to do. Due to the nature of being unable to know who's going to be your buddy on every mission, Quiet doesn't contribute anything to the main story until the post-game content. There's no real build-up towards elements that could be mysterious either. She just has a bunch of scenes that feel senseless, disconnected, and unpleasant. A lot of her presentation during this time is kind of seedy as well. I mean, you could say that she's presented as glamorous and powerful, but that really doesn't fit her presence in the story. It also feels like the camera is constantly trying to kiss her or motorboat her. It's not that this presentation is inherently bad, it just doesn't fit the few pieces of story they give her. It's very easy to write off her character as someone who's there for the tits, and whatever connection the game intends for you to make about her past, there's so little solid that there's no real direction to speculate in. The mystery they attempt to build is destroyed by any attempt at building a proper relationship to anyone, and all we have are loose, unconnected decisions. Quiet's mystery doesn't work to make her more interesting because it's too unfocused, too infrequent, and poorly presented. What ultimately saves Quiet is gameplay, and it's one hell of a saver. Quiet is the most satisfying buddy to have out in the field, and is the only one out of the four to feel like they have a personality. The way she acts out in the field is like someone really there making decisions for someone they know is sneaking nearby. She really feels like someone who understands the situation she's aiding in, and uses pretty good discretion to be helpful when it's called for. She knows little things worth marking for both your benefit and hers, and her more human style of help really taps into that buddy in war feel that the gameplay has. As much as I discussed how Quiet's presentation doesn't fit her story, it does fit her gameplay because she's very much the one-woman army who conquers her enemies soundly, and that sort of character is more suited to a glamorous and powerful presentation. In the field, however, Quiet is rarely physically in front of you, but her presence is always felt. Her green laser is a sign that she's always watching your back, and the bodies around you that she'll leave behind are certainly a trace that she's nearby. As I've said before, it was easy for me to gain interest in Quiet because her presence and gameplay made sneaking more organically fun and eventful. I became much more attached to her because of the gameplay than I would have if she was only in cutscenes. However much Quiet needed a definitive character and a proper relationship with all the important people in the story, she gained a separate but also strong character and relationship in gameplay. The character of a ruthless, brutal, yet insightful, smart, and caring friend, and with the relationship being to the player.
I chose the language of gratitude instead, and go back to silence.
Now here's the deal breaker. The one whose character was relying on mystery, and it wasn't enough. Naomi in Guns of the Patriots. Where is she? Why is she with Liquid? Why did she contact Otacon? Why is she in danger? Why was she acting so weird and awkward? So on, and so on. As the game progresses, she does her job of filling in Snake with the details of Liquid's plan, But there's so many details she seemingly intentionally leaves out or presents in a strange way. She's revealed to be with Liquid, but doesn't attempt to leave of her own will despite every guard for a mile being incapacitated. Her reason for being with Liquid is kind of explained as wanting to get rid of the Patriots, but the logistics of how she got with him are never explained, and the scene doesn't really say what she personally doesn't like about the Patriots. The choice to contact Otacon is eventually filled in, but there's something extremely awkward about how the details are filled in by Otacon and not Naomi herself. Some questions are answered, but there's a real lack of character to how she does it. Naomi is someone who's intended to provide definitive answers to some questions, but unlike Drebin and Eva, who could be trustable because it's clear they had reasons to want your character to succeed, Naomi lacks that immediate sense of motivation and individuality that the other two have. So much of what she does is just provide exposition, but I never really feel like I see Naomi in these scenes. With Snake, she goes between being a long-lost friend, a professional doctor, and a quite vindictive mocker, all within a short time frame. With Otacon, she goes between acting like a love-struck teenager and a fellow scientific professional in quick succession. With Vamp, she acts like a fellow co-worker, a love-struck teenager again, and someone grieving over a hospital patient. These might actually be cool if they had good transitions between, but she changes so jarringly between all of her roles all the damn time. There's something infuriating about a game that goes to so much effort to maintain consistency, being really inconsistent. Born out of my own frustration with Naomi's actions in this game, I tried to coherently put motivation and themes to Naomi in this game, and I think I have an okay analysis. Naomi's scenes are more interesting once you think about who has control over the other's actions and who controls the directions. There are a lot of scenes in this game that only work when you plant the idea in your head that she's trying to control the people around her by learning to understand what motivates them and using that for her goal. The idea of her being much more in control of her destiny brings clarity to scenes that make little sense on repeated viewings. Presenting herself to be in danger despite there being none, to motivate them to act quickly, emphasizing how there's nothing she can do, so that Snake is motivated to take control himself.
I can't slip free.
Then I'll free us both.
Manipulating Snake to make the most of his time by telling him how little time he has,
Half a year.
and then telling him that it's even shorter than previously stated.
No. 3 months at the most.
3 months?
Directing Snake's attention everywhere so she can upload his biodata without him seeing, and why she chose to kill herself in spite of her death being avoidable. She wanted to control when she would die. This mindset doesn't create a solid personality for Naomi as much as a skill set and ethics. She's willing to lie to as many people as possible to aid in her plan. Despite only being a researcher, she is cunning, observant, and charming enough to make it all possible. This theme and background detail makes her actions more believable and consistent, rather than being a triple agent just for the sake of the story folding out the way it does. My analysis is definitely over detailed and probably way more in depth than any normal person would be expected to take in. My problem is though that this is really the only way the character makes sense, and it's really unrewarding compared to speculation with characters like Ocelot Boss or even Quiet. Most of the other characters have something that is rewarding because of their mystery, and in most cases it fits their character. The theme of mystery for this video became central as I realized how little of a payoff there is to any effort put into understanding Naomi in any scene, and inevitably compared her to other characters who have similar setups. Personality-wise, the only thing you can really get out of her is being extremely motivated, extremely observant of other people's reactions, and insisting on keeping control over what she does. Most of her skills are just carried over traits from the original Metal Gear Solid, and besides, she doesn't like what those Patriots are doing, there isn't much to pin down who she is. Solidus acted directly through the story and was interesting enough that not liking the Patriots was a good central core, but Naomi doesn't have enough going to work like he did. Naomi wasn't originally a mysterious character, she was just a supporting player who eventually gained surprise origins. But there weren't too many portions where you were intended to speculate on her intentions. you could still see her as a humorous, snarky, supportive, and well-informed doctor whose backstory paints her as someone sympathetic to those who want to understand more about themselves, gain a sense of self-control, and stop others from being used by medical science in unethical ways. In this game, however, the way she acts around other characters is all over the place, and watching her scenes back are just weird because it doesn't feel like she's acting like a human being. My analysis makes her scenes more consistent, but there's so little that can be seen as her true self. So how can you properly learn who Naomi's character is? Even with the failed mystery, I see Drebin as a smart, light-hearted, mischievous prankster with a bit of a cynical edge and grim history in war. I see Quiet as driven, ruthless, dangerous, but also friendly to a point. I can't really say the same with Naomi, at least in Guns of the Patriots. She's like if Drebin had scenes with characters besides Snake, but wasn't allowed to show any personality and had no presence in gameplay. She isn't a character who makes me want to learn more about her. She's a character who I just wish made more coherent sense. There is a character that can be pieced together from these loose scenes throughout the game. The scenes that can't be painted as work towards her goals are the reactions to the tests, talking with Ocelot on the phone, her reactions to Snake's wrinkly body, talking with Sunny and helping her cook, her reaction to Raiden, both on the helicopter and on the Nomad, her interactions with Otacon after realizing Sunny was a better choice to finish her program, her reaction to Guns of the Patriots reveal, her talk with Liquid and Vamp on the boat, the security cam footage of her and Vamp, and presumably everything after the confirm from Sunny. So she's someone who is uncomfortable with pain and violence, who feels guilty for those who've been hurt in some way because of her research, and she seems easygoing and jovial enough with those who are her co-workers. She believes that there is an obligation to benefit the next generation in some way and give them a degree of control over themselves. So she's the same character as herself in MGS1. Legitimately, the only things that are new in Guns of the Patriots is that she seems very motherly towards kids and hadn't experienced, in her words, the joy of living. Regardless, that seems like a pretty decent build for a character, and it was in MGS1, but these moments are so infrequent in the sea of cutscenes in MGS4, even within Naomi's own scenes. While giving people control over their own fate is thematic to Naomi's scenes, it's all underplayed as Naomi primarily serves as a source of information and provider of important items. The motivation behind some of her actions are left too ambiguous in some cases, and it's really easy to write off some of her senseless moments as just bad writing or poor characterization. It's unfortunate that Naomi has the bones of a good character, but the attempt at making her mysterious makes her difficult to properly understand, so even the pieces that fit together don't feel connected. Usually the idea with a mysterious character is to build interest in the audience for what is going on with the character's motivations, hidden history, hidden actions, or whatever. Mystery characters, in a way, make you try to fill in the blanks in a way that's fun, but also kind of personal since you become the writer in some way. It's a delicate balance of inviting the player to guess the possibilities, even when there's no intent of giving a solid answer. The issue with Naomi is that there's such a little sense of who Naomi is in this game that it's too easy to play her off as an underwritten character, although that's probably more likely than I'm letting on. A mystery character may not necessarily need an exuberant personality or a gameplay presence, but there needs to be something direct about them that's enticing enough to make the player want to wonder about the missing details. Naomi is missing something that is inherently enticing and unique to the audience. So leaving questions for the audience to answer just spotlights how much she isn't fully realized. I barely feel like I get a grasp on who the character of Naomi is or what she may be feeling or thinking in scenes, other than a blanket, I have a role to play that will fit my goal. Her personality, in essence, is to make the story move forward in the right way. This is why I've always found Naomi to be so empty and shallow in this game, because she only exists to make later story events happen, and neither her motivation or personality are present enough to make that work. Mysterious characters are a great way to draw the player into the story and make new information about the characters seem incredibly important. It's also a fantastic way to space out the introduction of information regarding characters or story, but there still needs to be some relevant character and story that the audience can be engaged with. It's a difficult task to balance the fundamentals of the character without over-informing the audience, and balance the intrigue without making the audience frustrated at the lack of clarity and motivation. The Metal Gear Solid series is interesting in its successes and failures in this regard, as a lot of characters need to be built up and developed, and making note of how little you know of these characters is pretty smart if your audience has something to draw upon, and infuriating if they don't. If the mystery isn't informed with an interesting personality or story in some way, shape, or form, the mystery will fail because there's nothing interesting to incite wonder. I hope this elaborate giving out about Naomi's character has been worth the viewing experience and has helped you appreciate a lot of what the characters did well, and may even make you see other characters in a new positive light. Thanks for watching. If you want some more Metal Gear goodness, here's my top 9 improvements that could have been made to Phantom Pain. And if you're interested in games that haven't been released yet, check out my top 5 features that I want in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. And be sure to like, sub, and all that other good stuff. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll have another video out by next week. And oh boy, that one's gonna be a doozy.